The Winter family's annual dinner was underway at my parents' sprawling estate, a place where achievements were measured in corner offices and fancy job titles. I lingered at the far end of the table, quietly observing as my relatives boasted about their positions at Winter's Industries, the empire my grandfather had built. "Another record-breaking quarter," my brother James declared, adjusting his CFO nameplate with a smug grin. Though some of us actually had to step into the office to make it happen. The jab was unmistakable. Me, the daughter who abandoned a VP role 3 years ago to work remotely. The disappointment. "Emily, darling," my mother said with a saccharine tone. "Still doing that? What do you call it?" "Remote consulting." I checked my phone beneath the table. A message from my team. All paperwork finalized. Operation Winter Storm was ready to launch. "You know," my father added, swirling his expensive scotch, "there's always a role for you here at Winters, if you ever decide to rejoin the real business world. Even in HR or marketing." Charlotte, my sister-in-law, chuckled. "Though you'd actually have to show up in person and dress the part." She gave a pointed look at my simple black sweater and slacks, so modest compared to her designer attire. If only they knew I'd worn that exact outfit while secretly negotiating the purchase of their company's controlling shares. "I prefer working from home," I said evenly. "It works for me." "Style," James scoffed. "Running some online business hardly counts as style. While you tinker around, we run a billion-dollar company." I stifled a grin, thinking of the documents awaiting my signature. The ones that would soon make me the majority owner of that billion-dollar company. "And what do these remote consultants earn these days?" Charlotte asked, voice dripping with mock curiosity. "Enough to run a real office," I replied, picturing my hidden penthouse headquarters with a view of the city, the one they'd never bothered to ask about. My phone buzzed again. "Stock transfer complete. Final phase ready." "Well," my father toasted, raising his glass. "Here's to Winters Industries, a company run by true executives who understand tradition and proper business practices. The same traditions that had left the company vulnerable to a stealth takeover. The same practices that had created gaps wide enough for a patient investor to slip through." "Speaking of the company," James said, "we should talk about the board meeting. One Emily never bothers attending since she's not a real executive anymore." Charlotte added with a smirk. "Just a what was it? Remote worker." My phone lit up. Message. "Miss Winters, the transfer is complete. You now own 51% of Winters Industries. Congratulations." I sipped my water, masking my smile. 3 years of careful planning. 3 years of letting them think I'd failed while quietly building my empire. "Actually," I said softly, "I believe I'll attend this board meeting." The table froze. My father's scotch paused midair. "You," James stammered. "But you're not even with the company." "About that," I said, pulling up my tablet and displaying the finalized documents. "I think you'll find things have changed." "What are you talking about?" my father demanded. "Perhaps we should discuss the fact that Shadow Peak Ventures has just acquired a controlling interest in Winters Industries," I said calmly. "Or more accurately, that my company now owns a controlling interest." The silence was perfect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's buying the empire they thought you couldn't handle. And this was only the beginning. Chaos erupted. James toppled his wine glass. Charlotte's polished composure cracked. My father's face shifted through a spectrum of disbelief. "What do you mean, your company?" he demanded, voice trembling. "A billion-dollar investment firm." "Yes," I said, calm as ever. "The one I built while you all assumed I was just tinkering with a little home business." My mother clutched her pearls, a nervous habit from her socialite days. "But that's impossible. You've been doing nothing for 3 years." "Actually," I swiped through my tablet, revealing more documents. "I've been busy building an investment empire, buying undervalued companies, strategizing acquisitions, and watching Winters Industries make exactly the mistakes I predicted." James jumped up so fast his chair crashed behind him. "This has to be a joke. Shadow Peak is run by E.W. Stone," I said, smiling. Professionally. Did it ever occur to you what those initials meant? Emily Winter Stone. I took Mom's maiden name to keep family ties from muddying my success. My phone buzzed. Legal team ready to initiate management changes. Charlotte's designer heel tapped anxiously on the marble floor. But you work from home. In sweatpants. You missed the last 3 galas because I was in Tokyo closing a $1 billion deal, I said. Funny how much work you can get done when you're not worried about appearances. Daddy, James pleaded, turning to our father. Do something. She can't just. My father's eyes were glued to his phone, reading a flood of urgent board messages. It's legal, he murmured. She really did it. She bought us out right under our noses. While you mocked my little online business, I said, I was building something far bigger than Winters Industries. Shadow Peak Ventures owns companies across 3 continents. Winters is just the latest acquisition. But why? My mother whispered. Why didn't you tell us? I leaned back, recalling every family dinner where they dismissed my work, every snide remark about working remotely, every assumption that I'd failed. 'Cause Mom, you never asked. You were too busy assuming I had failed to notice that I was succeeding. Too focused on titles and designer labels to see that real power doesn't need to flaunt itself. My phone buzzed again. Board members requesting an emergency meeting. Rumors of leadership changes were spreading fast. I stood smoothing my black sweater. I have companies to run. Several, actually. Tomorrow's board meeting should be enlightening. You can't just walk in and take over, James sputtered. I'm acting CFO for now, I said softly. Though you might want to check your performance records. Shadow Peak only rewards merit. No more promotions because of a last name. Charlotte's perfectly painted expression faltered. But the parties, the networking events. Our roles will now be judged by actual business results, I said. Funny how much money you save when unnecessary perks disappear. My father finally spoke. Emily, we can discuss this as family. Family? I raised an eyebrow. Like how you discussed my career choices. Or when you told the board I couldn't handle corporate life. We were trying to help, my mother insisted. No, I corrected gently. You were trying to control me to make my success fit your narrow vision. Guess what? Success doesn't need corner offices or designer labels. Sometimes it works from home in sweatpants, while quietly building an empire you'll never see coming. I packed my things, ready to leave the dinner I had just turned upside down. Oh, and James, I said as I passed him. About those record quarters you were bragging about, wait until someone who actually understands modern business takes over. The silence that followed me out of the room was sweeter than any dessert they could have served. Sometimes revenge isn't about proving them wrong. It's about buying the company they assumed you couldn't touch and running it better than they ever could. And I plan to enjoy every minute of it from my home office. In my sweatpants, naturally. The next morning, I strode into Winters Industries headquarters. For the first time in 3 years, I stepped into Winters Industries headquarters. The security guard did a double take. They were used to seeing the failed daughter slink through during mandatory family events, not stride in with purpose. Ms. Winters, he stammered, you're not on the approved list. Are you sure? I smiled and handed over my new ID. Undercover no more. The elevator ride to the executive floor was filled with whispers. News of Shadow Peak's takeover had spread like wildfire, but few had guessed it was the daughter who had supposedly quit corporate life behind it. I entered the boardroom exactly 3 minutes before the emergency meeting. James was already there, muttering urgently to his allies. Charlotte scrolled furiously on her phone, probably checking her stock options. My father sat at the head of the table, the same chair he had claimed for 30 years. Good morning, I said softly. The room went silent. Board members who had dismissed me for years suddenly couldn't look away. You can't sit there, James blurted, panic rising as I approached our father's chair. That's the CEO's seat. Exactly. I set my laptop on the table. Dad, I believe that seat belongs to me now. The shock on his face as he rose, as if his world was tilting off its axis, made every moment of underestimation over the past 3 years worth it. I opened my laptop. Let's discuss the changes Shadow Peak will be implementing. Changes. Charlotte's voice cracked. What changes? I brought up the first slide. Winters Industries restructuring plan. First, I began. We will conduct a full audit of all executive roles, performance reviews, and merit evaluations. Everyone will be assessed. No exceptions. James turned pale. But we're family. Funny, I said. How that word only matters when you're afraid of losing something. Was I family when you told the board I wasn't suited for executive work? My phone buzzed. Another message from Shadow Peak. Additional acquisitions ready for review. Second, I continued. All executive perks are suspended pending review, including private jets, luxury retreats, and yes, Charlotte, your monthly shopping allowance. She actually gasped. Third, I said, pausing for effect, we're implementing a modern work structure, including flexible remote options for all qualified employees. That's not how business is done, my father protested. No, I said. That's not how you did business. While you clung to outdated traditions, I built a global company without ever needing a corner office. Success doesn't require a designer suit or a mahogany desk. I pulled up the next slide, Shadow Peak's portfolio. The room went silent as the numbers appeared. That's billions, a board member whispered. All built from my home office, I confirmed. The one you mocked endlessly. Amazing what you can accomplish when you focus on results instead of appearances. My father slumped back in his chair. Why didn't you tell us all this time? He asked quietly. Would you have listened? I said softly. Or would you have forced me to do it your way? Sometimes the best path to success is letting others underestimate you, until it's too late. My phone buzzed again. Global partners notified of management change. Stock up 30%. I stood smoothing my black sweater. I have an empire to run. Those who wish to be part of Winters Industries' future can adapt to our merit-based culture. Those who don't, I glanced at James and Charlotte, will find their severance packages very generous. As I walked out of the boardroom, my boardroom now, I added a final touch. Oh, and James, I said smiling, the coffee machine in the break room needs refilling. You might need some practice learning new skills. The look on his face was priceless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking over the family empire. It's proving that success doesn't need their approval, or their traditions, to make an impact. And I did it all from my home office, in comfortable clothes, building something far bigger than they ever imagined. Because sometimes the ultimate power move is letting them think you've failed, until you own the definition of success.